We've been beating down pots and pans. We've been angry about a bunch of shit. But if we don't get down to the ground level of so people can understand why we're pissed the fuck off.
And this restaurant is going to change that?
Yeah, it's part of it. That's why this restaurant that's above us right now, it's part of that change. It's part of that change. We are part of that change. You're part of that change. Nick's part of that change. Danny's part of that change. We're all part of that change.
Oh, hello. I'm Nick Jiménez. Welcome to my home, where sometimes we record episodes of Pan Con Podcast. However, this episode of Pan Con Podcast was not recorded here. Just this brief introduction to give you a little bit of context into what you are about to hear. Our last episode was with Martha Bueno. She is a candidate for a seat on the Miami-Dade County Commission. After we were done recording that episode, Mike and I had planned to record a mini-episode about Café Habana, which is a New York-based restaurant that is planning to expand into Miami. There was some controversy related to that opening because of their branding and their decor and the story of their restaurant. We'll get into that in this episode. I am jumping in here with this introduction because what ended up happening was we kind of just transitioned right into that conversation. Martha stuck around. So we didn't do a good job of sort of setting it up in light of the fact that it was going to be its own standalone thing. So that's what this episode is. That's the context I wanted to give you. Also, I fucked up. The restaurant has, they have locations in New York City and in Malibu. For some reason, I got it in my head that it was New York City and Honolulu. So I said Honolulu very confidently, and everybody kind of followed my lead. So throughout this episode, every time you hear a reference to Honolulu, you should be thinking Malibu. They are two different places. One of them is not a place that has one of these restaurants. Finally, this does come up in this conversation, but I just want to note, in case somebody involved with Café Habana is listening but doesn't get this far, know that you are. Sean Meenan is invited. Cindy Crawford is invited. Anybody who's involved at the ownership level or as a partner or an investor with Café Habana is more than welcome to join us on Pan Con Podcast. Mike and I would very much like to engage in this conversation with you directly rather than just talk about you. We have attempted to reach out to you and for whatever reason have not heard back. But if you come across this, get in touch with us. You can email us at panconpodcast@dademag.com. DM us on all the social media things. You could probably find out where I live and show up, say hi to Petey, all that stuff. But we would like to sit across from you face to face and talk about this. And of course, let the listeners of this podcast in on that conversation. I think that it would be a valuable thing for everybody to hear and to be exposed to without all of the barriers and editing and shortening and abridgments that happen in print media and in social media and Twitter and that sort of stuff. So with all of that context and setup, here is our mini-sode. Me, Michael Beltran, and Martha Bueno about Café Habana. Oh, by the way, apologies that, I'm not apologizing for my not being on camera, but if you're watching the video version of this, I'm off camera. Of course, we let Martha keep her seat, and so I ended up staying off camera. So when I'm speaking, you won't see me. It is what it is. Deal with it. I'm sorry. What are you going to do?
We're doing another one, though, no, right?
Another what?
Another podcast.
Oh, did you want to talk about that thing?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Okay, so, all right, so we'll just keep, I won't even pause the recording.
Yeah, no, I mean...
So, before we started recording this, Mike and I had talked about the fact that we wanted to record a conversation about this Café Habana thing.
Yes.
So we'll make this like a Patreon.
No, let's fucking publish.
It'll be out in the world. It'll be out in the world. Okay.
How many times have you already asked? You've reached out in all the things.
All
and
right.
You've got no fucking response.
Okay.
The New York Times has reached out. He's hiding behind the fucking what does he call himself? Reggaeton aficionado.
Does he call himself that?
He does. All right,
I don't know. Okay, so
welcome to the next episode of Pancom Podcast, brought to you by Spite, Anger, and Negronis.
This is a special mini-sode, a little mini-sode of Pancom Podcast.
Oh, I like that mini-sode.
A little mini-sode.
Mini-sode.
So there's not a camera on me right now, but I will introduce this.
You want me to flip this?
No,
the
that's
camera?
okay. No,
I can bring a camera.
No, I've seen what happens when you hold the camera in your hand.
The fuck does that mean?
There's
I do
blurry,
solid work
there's
with fucking
blurry
cameras.
fans and the whole thing. It's a disaster.
What a fucking prick. Go on.
Listen, that's fine.
Okay.
So, just to give people a little bit of background, Café Habana
Right.
is a restaurant in New York City. They have locations elsewhere in the country as well. I think there's one in Honolulu.
Cool.
And I forget where else. The LA maybe also, yeah. One of the owners is Sean Meenan. There are other partners. I forget their names. They made news recently because they have plans to open in Miami's Brickell neighborhood.
Which no one will care in Brickell.
No one will care in Brickell. Some people, but not enough people will care in Brickell.
They're not. They're just not going to be in the know enough. No.
Right. No. Yeah. There are people in Brickell who are. I have known maybe not.
Do they live under rocks in Brickell? Am I
Okay.
unaware?
I have known people maybe who don't live in Brickell, but I have known people who work 5 minutes from Brickell and who live maybe a little north of Brickell or in Miami Beach, who have never, who are unaware. To give you an idea, right? And this is relevant to this subject, right? Because we're talking about people who are coming in from New York and opening a business in Miami. I have met people who have been living in Miami for multiple years who work. The people I'm thinking of specifically are like near Biscayne and like 50 and 60 something, right?
Nowhere near Brickell.
Mm-hmm. No, nowhere near Brickell, but outside of rush hour, a quick drive, right? It's not, and people who might very well live in Brickell, I just don't know where they lived. I just know they worked there, right?
Okay.
Like they're in that north of Little Havana, north of downtown thing. Who I have witnessed them and their shock when they learn that there are entire communities in Miami where a lot of people grow up not speaking English at home with their parents and grandparents. Like that's how disconnected north of Little Havana is from the southwest.
And what I love the most about that, just it has nothing to do with what we're about to talk about, but they were like during the development of Little Havana, what they wanted to do was make it like Brickell West. Right?
Yeah.
Which I just don't see that ever happening because there's such a deep-rooted Cuban community there that they're just going to be like, nah, y'all can go fuck yourself. Like, it's just not going to happen. As much as Bill Martin wanted to happen, it's never going to happen.
So in the interest of just sort of wrapping up the little summary of this, so the thing that we're talking about is there's this New York restaurant or New York-based restaurant called Café Habana that is...
Which is Mexican food.
Which is personally, it's okay with me because their story is that they take their inspiration, and I assume, I have understood this, I don't know for a fact, but I've understood this to mean that this is also where the name came from, that they were like, their brand marketing story is that they're inspired by the restaurant in Mexico City where supposedly Fidel and Che Guevara
Such an inspiring story.
Planned the revolution.
So inspiring. You know, nothing inspires me more than starting a revolution where we kill thousands of people.
So
we put them up against a firing squad.
Here's the thing.
So inspiring.
These are people who open their restaurant in Manhattan and who have like a little outpost in Brooklyn. And as far as I'm concerned, because and we've all like lived in the world where these people exist. Se le puede perdonar. There's an ignorance. There's an ignorance that if you can chalk it, I generally will chalk up to ignorance and stupidity what can be chalked up to that rather than to malice and some kind of evil, right? Like And really, like, if you spend enough time in New York or anywhere north of like Dade and Broward County, there are so many people who have this warped idea of what the revolution was, of what its significance was to Cuba.
Everywhere outside of Miami.
This is just...
And look at them all moving here.
And
because it works so wonderfully
Sure.
that they've screwed up their own place and
Sure.
coming here.
So, but
Swell.
like
Maravilloso.
when you see this Sean Meenan character talking, who he's given like a TED talk about the nonprofit they started, which is called like Habana Works, and it's just like it all sort of like stemmed from this restaurant brand, right? But it's like Habana Works has nothing to do with Cuba. It's like they do community service type stuff in Brooklyn and whatever, which is fine. Like it just became like the theme of all of his stuff. Basically, they were opening a restaurant in Miami, and when people got wind because of this TikTok account that also posts to Instagram,
They were the first to break the story.
I
love that.
I will.
Thanks for bringing that out.
I'll cut out a little bit of myself here. I'll just to give this guy a little bit of shout out. I think it's. Hold on, because I was DMing with this character just earlier.
I love how you call him a character.
Yeah, what Josue has to say is the guy's name on Instagram. What Josue has to say. He was the one who sort of like, if he wasn't the first to talk about it, he was the one who certainly like his content about it got most popular quickest. They're opening a restaurant in Miami, and this whole brand is inspired by this Fidel and Che story. And then what happens? People lose their shit. They start trolling the comment section of these people's Instagram accounts and posts and things.
As they should.
I disagree. Really? So here's my personal take on this, as long as I'm talking.
Shocker.
I mean, I don't know.
Go on, just keep going.
Because we've basically given the summary, right? Like they were going to open a restaurant, people freaked out, and then Miami reacted, which is fine. This episode of Pan Con Podcast is brought to you by The Barrel. This is the barbecue grill that, if you're watching this in video form, is in front of us. We're here with Chef Danny Boza. Danny, tell us a little bit about what the genesis of this thing was. Where does The Barrel come from?
You know, I was a chef. I was working for a civil engineering firm before that, and I really hated everything that I was doing at the time. So I've always had a passion for cooking. And then, I decided one day to move to New York, and everything took off from New York, Chicago, Hong Kong, LA, Colorado, and then to Hawaii, and then back to Miami. And then I opened up my own spot in Coral Gables, sold the restaurant, and moved on to the next bigger, better thing. Obviously, COVID hit, so we had our own passion project. It started because a friend, was now a business partner, Diego Londoño, approached me to do a menu for his coffee shop. And I said, let's go to Colombia. I got to see the tree. I got to, feel it out, get a little inspiration. So I went out there, and then, I tried some of the food when I got there, and I was blown away by the flavor. I found out they were actually cooking with the actual coffee tree. And then I saw their South American style roaster, and it was just really dinged up, beat up oil drum. Yeah. And I said, you know what? I can make something that's really cool. So myself and Diego put our heads together, and it's a home run in my opinion. It's very sleek, very beautiful to look at. It's very, very cool.
It's a conversation starter. People see it in your yard and they want to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely people see it. And again, we're not trying to take over anybody's yard. We're trying to make it a compliment to it. So what you would do on your regular grill for something very quick, you might want to say on a weekend I got more time, I don't want to chill out and, use the barrel and create some beautiful flavors out of that with our hardwood lump charcoal.
Do you remember what some of the first things you did with it when you were maybe like prototyping it, or you had it close to final form?
Yeah, actually I'll keep it short. So one of the main things is that our base was simply just the base. It was just a very plain base. And in order to stop all the fat that was dripping and rendering, I would use sand around the side. But of course, even some of the best chefs in the world make some of the greatest mistakes. So I would drop some of the food directly on the sand, and there's no getting sand off food once it hits it. So we had to think about different systems. So now we created these 2 half-moon systems at the base in which you can add liquid and have a grate on top, which pretty much sets this apart from any other, grill, roaster, smoker, which, the 3-in-1 combo is not really commonly found out there.
Very cool. So if people want to learn more, if people want to buy this thing, how do they get more information about the barrel?
I would say go to our Instagram page, at Barrel the BBQ. And, you can go and see our link tree there, which has our YouTube channel, our order page, our information, our specs about the barrel. And it has a bunch of fun videos and very cool things that we've cooked out of it so far.
Very cool. And once you're there, if you use promo code PANCON10, that's PANCON10, PANCON, because I know a lot of people have trouble with this. We don't speak Spanish. We've been called Pumpkin Podcast, the Panco Podcast. This is PANCON10 for $100 off of the barrel. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank you.
This episode of Pancon Podcast is also brought to you by Elite Impact Windows. Elite Impact Windows does exactly what it sounds like they do. They are purveyors of impact windows. That's the kind that, especially if you're in a hurricane-prone sort of area, you want so stuff doesn't come flying through your windows. Mike, you have impact windows on some of your restaurants.
Listen, I heard a rumor. Tell me if this is true. Are all their products tested to go up to 185 mile per hour wind pressures?
That is how their products are tested. That's all their products are tested to meet that. I don't know. I've never been out in 185 mile an hour wind. But if I were, I think I might want to wear some of these windows as like a suit.
I feel safer already just thinking about if I was walking around in that kind of wind and I was wrapped around with their just windows just wrapped around me, I'd feel like a much safer person.
Yeah, you should put them on your caddy.
Maybe not. But I also heard that they meet all the requirements of Miami-Dade County.
They do meet all the requirements of Miami-Dade County.
Fuck me, that's amazing.
EliteImpactGlass.com or on Facebook, Elite Impact Windows, Instagram, Elite Impact Glass. They are proud partners with Eco Windows, CGI, and Windoor.
One of the things I really appreciate about them and their company is that all their products are made locally here in South Florida, and fuck me, that's amazing.
Look at this. They are all made here in South Florida.
Did you do your research?
Man, I did not do the research.
Somebody didn't show up ready.
They have competitive pricing with totally 0% financing available. I mean, I don't know if you have credit like mine, you might not get 0% financing, but it may be an option. It's possible that that's an option for you. 0% financing. I don't know exactly how that works. Whatever the case, if you go on the website, you ask for a quote, and you mention Pancon Podcast, you will get 10% off of your installation.
And I don't know if you guys have ever installed windows before, but 10% off of window installation, that's a good fucking deal. And you know what? You got it here first on Pancon Podcast.
That's right. Mention Pancon Podcast. Again, it's EliteImpactGlass.com or Elite Impact Windows on Facebook, Elite Impact Glass on Instagram. By the way, you mentioned restaurants. They do commercial properties. So whether it's for your home or your business, if you need Elite Impact Glass to put, all that and do the things that they do so well, you wanna get in on that.
Also, this company, very woke. Very woke. They also offer solar power systems with backup batteries and custom generators for your home. You know why? Because they're woke.
I don't know if that's a positive thing these days to be woke, but but it's nice. I mean,
sounds good.
It sounds good to me that there's solar power involved.
I'm into it.
Generators, solar power, impact glass. If you go to their website, they got a video that shows off like a home that has all of that stuff going on at one time, which is pretty wild.
That's pretty wild.
A lot of panels, a lot of glass, a lot of things. Pretty soon, we are going to get our hands on at least one pane of impact glass.
I'm ready.
And we're going to try to break it.
I'm ready.
I don't know what the procedure will be, but Mike's breath will have a blast of freshness from that Banaka you just heard. I like this for the podcast, 'cause you can really
Banaka
hear it.
blast at last. Fast blast Banaka.
I just want everybody to know, and apologies to Elite Impact Glass, because this I don't want this to sound like an ad for Banaka, but in the time that we've been sitting here to record this ad, Mike has blasted himself with Banaka like 5 times.
Twice. Get
I
excited
don't
out.
know, man.
Twice.
I don't know.
Come on. Twice.
Elite Impact Glass. Thanks to our sponsor.
Thanks.
Go get your windows from.
Go get those windows.
I think that in no particular order, here are my thoughts on this thing. Number one, I think it's important to take a breath and consider where these people who are opening this restaurant are coming from. Not in the interest of leaving it open to maybe we like a Cuban Revolution-inspired restaurant. No, of course not. But leaving it open to the idea that maybe you can convince them of something, right? And in in my saying that, I say publicly, and it sounds like I'm some kind of a celebrity or something, but like in my little sphere of people who read the rants that I put with my funky little initials on Instagram.
Yeah.
A number of people, and I actually spoke with who's been a guest on this podcast. He owns. I contacted him and I said, like, hey, do you happen to have any kind of a connection to these people or their vendors or anybody that we can like reach out to them to bring them onto the podcast? And one of the first things that he told me was when I was on the phone with him was, and I hesitate to say this publicly, but I don't think he would mind. His question, not his like, oh, don't do this, but his question was like, do you have any concerns about platforming these people, right?
That's a good question.
And my answer was, no, I don't. And this is why. I think that to the extent that there is such a thing as the Cuban exile community, which as an anarcho-capitalist who rejects all these identitarian labels, I tend to reject the idea that there is such a thing as the Cuban American community, because God knows there are plenty of Cuban Americans who are not part of any community I want to be a part of, like some of these communists who are speaking at Bitcoin conferences and all that kind of shit.
He's not Cuban American. He's just straight up Cuban.
No, but there are people like Arturo Lopez Levy, and there's a bunch of people. There's a bunch of people that I have no interest in like associating with them and being a part of a community with them. If I'm in a community politically, I'm in a community of people who love liberty wherever they're from.
Right.
I have more of a kinship with any with any Czech or any Belarusian or whatever than I do with, automatically with some Cuban or some Mexican or whatever the fuck it is. I think that there is something to be said for the idea that if these people are coming from a perspective of some kind of ignorance, right? Of not knowing these stories, of not having been exposed to these stories, which God knows there are people in Miami who haven't been exposed, who don't know the stories. In Brooklyn, it's that times 1,000. If your interest is in advancing a cause, is in advancing liberty, is in spreading ideas, then you need to leave yourself open to the possibility of co-opting this restaurant group. The clip that I played, right, that I posted on Instagram immediately after my little initial rant, was from a movie. It was a documentary called How to Start a Revolution, which is named for the book that it is based on by Gene Sharp. So Gene Sharp is an American scholar who basically wrote the playbook that every nonviolent movement that has toppled a dictator has followed for our entire lifetimes and then some. Right, the Black Spring, the fall of the Iron Curtain, all the rest of that. And in that documentary, there's one of the leaders of Otpor, which was the movement that brought down Milosevic. And when I was back in my more activist days, I did trainings with people who participated in Otpor, and so it sort of like really stuck in my mind. And the thing that he said was that in this case, he's talking about the police in Serbia, but I think that you can extend the same idea to everything from the police to some of these, to borrow the term, useful idiots, right? That have been sort of like captured by communist propaganda. And the line was, and I'm paraphrasing, you don't throw stones at the police. The way that you bring change is that you co-opt discursive pillars. All of these regimes, whether it's Cuba's, whether it's Serbia's, whether it's the Russians, whether it's whatever, rely on pillars of support. They don't maintain power based on nothing. They have support. In the case of Cuba's government, it's the support of all of these cultural institutions all over the hemisphere and all over the world, including Café Habana, right? It's a small component, but it is a component. Part of the support of the Cuban government is that you have these cultural institutions like this restaurant group that have these glowing images of Fidel and Che in their restaurants. And so the question for me is this. Would you rather keep them from opening in Brickell, where they will change zero minds anyway, or open your arms to them, let them on your podcast, show them that you want to have an exchange in good faith and not troll them to the point that they have to shut down the comments on their Instagram section, of their Instagram posts, and at least allow yourself the possibility that not only do you keep them from opening in Brickell, but that they change their wallpaper in Honolulu. I would rather leave myself open to that possibility for at least a few months before I close that door. Because if we close that door immediately, then we are fucked. And I see you with your hand up. I will call
I have my hand up.
I will
That's
call
all
on
I'm
you in
saying.
a moment. And
Okay,
I will
cool.
just close here by saying that this guy who was a Notpor, I think there are a lot of people who hear that and they think, oh, well, that's just so impossible. They'll never change their minds.
Oh,
No, I'm not saying that's what you're thinking.
Okay.
But this person from Otpor, the point that he makes is that if we're thinking of like, oh, this Sean Meenan must be so immovable, the approach that Otpor took to the police, to Milosevic's police in Serbia, was to say, not we are in opposition to you, we're at war with you, but rather we are both victims. Right? We are out in the street protesting when we'd rather be at home raising our kids and doing our jobs and you are in the street beating us when you'd rather be actually just being police. And there's no sense in this war between victims and victims.
I know I'm going to speak.
So
that was a beautiful sermon. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of that.
Can I get an amen?
Yeah. Woo! Good Lord. That was good. I think that there's like layers to this problem, right? Like what you just pointed out. There's layers to it, like the like sensational aspect of like what the like Che t-shirts and the revolution does to like certain age groups of kids, right? Like they look at it in a certain way and they almost idolize it and they want to emulate it and they don't really understand it. And I think that it's a cause and effect, right? Like that it has affected this and that's why this exists. And this isn't the only example of this. There's several examples of this. It's just this is the first time that it's come to our streets, right? Like it's the only time it's where was the other one?
Salt Bay is an example.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, super agree. But I think...
but I don't think he led with his politics.
Well,
we
I
didn't
don't-
know this about him until he started serving Chavez or whatever.
Salt Bay didn't lead with saying, like, I'm a Cuban concept.
Right.
Right?
Salt
Like,
Bay
it
was
wasn't
just, like,
it wasn't
his
named
meat
after, like, a
restaurant.
Cuban thing. So I don't think he led with that. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I get your point. But at the same time, I see it all the time. I remember I was this was not my last trip to DC. It was the previous one, and I was day drinking, and I was riding a scooter, and there was a restaurant there, another Cuban restaurant. The first item on their menu was guacamole, and they had a big mural of Che inside, and I was like with three guys, and they were just like, chef, just don't do it. But I was day drinking, so I did it, right? And I wheeled. I took the scooter all the way inside, and I was just like, "What the fuck is wrong with you guys? Like, do you not understand what this really means? What this is saying to people?" But they don't know. They have no fucking idea. Right. And I think the truth is, listen, we could essentially destroy these people every day, and it's easy. That's the easy road. To just take the comment section and just barrel down and what Louis said is right. Like, do we want to give them a platform? I don't want to ever give anyone a platform that's a reggaeton aficionado ever.
Oh, I'm sorry, you just did.
Well,
I love reggaeton. Love reggaeton.
You're running for a seat,
That's
so
the real reason I ran out of coffee.
But like,
Bad Bunny's the shit. I'm sorry.
do they really understand what this stuff means? But then I would tell you on the other side, as someone that's a business owner and someone that, I take a culture super seriously, right? Because it's mine. I think that I've studied it. I understand it. I want it to grow. I love it. I think if you take that road, right? And it's what we said earlier, like talking about like, if I were to open a Mexican restaurant, I want to understand everything I can about Mexican food. If we're opening several different types of restaurants, right? Like I understand French food super well, so we're going to open a French restaurant. Like I want to do right by them. I think if you're going to do that, and you're going to make money on that. You're going to capitalize on those things. You should understand them a little bit better. And that's exactly what I would say to them. It's like, if you're going to take, and it's cool, you can make all the faces you want. There's no cameras on you. So whatever face you make, people can't see.
That's right. No, I'm rolling my eyes and making all kinds of
Shocker. You're rolling your eyes at my statements? That's weird.
No, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I just disagree about whether.
Okay, so
Yeah, but it's fine. But like, once you capitalize on a culture, you should understand it better.
I just think that the analogy that you're drawing to, like, if I did this food or if I did that food, to me, it's less about the food and more about, like, if you're gonna put these people on your
would
wall.
you open a Mein Kampf something or another restaurant? Would you? Would you open like a North Korean? I don't know.
No,
like,
what I'm saying is,
come on, have a little.
What I'm saying is, if I wanted to,
and vote with your feet.
What I'm saying
personally, they should go out of business immediately.
Maybe.
And I think that if they open in Miami and plenty of people are like, oof, this is terrible.
But they won't go out of business. They open Brickell, they won't go out of business.
But here's the question.
You think that people protesting this restaurant in front of it, and somebody's like, hey, what's going on here? And you're like, these people support. Listen, there's over.
Is Salt Bay still there?
Salt Bay is still there.
Salt
Bay is still there.
Salt Bay served Maduro. Venezuelans and Cubans showed up to protest him, and he's still there sprinkling his salt.
Still there.
So
but he didn't lead with this thing. And you know what? And that's fine. And these
he
people
didn't lead with this thing, but he posed in basically, like, he put a Fidel Castro portrait up on his wall. He posed with it like Fidel Castro.
Sure, and he should absolutely be.
But here's my question to you then, and this is kind of a weird thing because we're recording a thing that's like semi-separate, but given I wonder what your thoughts are on what I was saying earlier about whether you are interested in at least leaving the door open for some period of time to seeing what would happen if you attempted to open.
Well, isn't that what I'm doing with Bitcoin? I told them the issue with
this
guy coming here, and we're leaving a door open for them to.
But the fact that you're doing it with Bitcoin has no bearing on whether.
I think that.
I just think that people need to know
because what you're
that
saying
the Cuban Revolution caused more death.
I understand.
There are 6,000 people plus.
No, Martha,
that have been put up against a fucking wall and shot to death.
I understand.
Che Guevara loved to kill people of color and gay people, and it's just like. Should we celebrate him? No.
Listen, Martha, I don't need anyone explaining to me how many people Che Guevara killed.
Yeah. So
I understand. I know the history. I know the history as well as you do, but that's not the question. You're saying they should be able to open the restaurant.
They should.
You also just said they should go out of business immediately.
Yes, because people
would probably
not go eat there.
So the question that I'm asking you is, as a person who knows the history and as a person who has an interest in that, would you agree with me that the preferable outcome is for them to stay in business and for us to have co-opted them, for us to have brought them to our side? And
I don't see how this is any different. So if they go out of business, somebody else is going to open up a store there.
No.
It might be even better. Maybe this is like the
but you
place.
don't change the dynamic of what they're doing and what they're saying.
Because here's the thing is that there's also an element of we have to consider that this isn't just an issue between a Cuban exile community and this one restaurant, right? And this is sort of the way that I approach all of my interactions on issues like this, right? Is that it's never really, I mean, if you're lucky, you change the mind of the person you're talking to. If you're lucky, but that never happens. Almost never. Especially not on the interwebs when you're trolling people on Instagram. That just doesn't happen.
That's when the comments get turned off.
Okay, but who it is about is the people who are watching it happen. So what does the person on the sidelines see, right? What does the person who subscribed to the New York Times from Tulsa, Oklahoma see in their emails? What they see is a political history of an island they don't understand. Some dude who started Etsy that they spend a bunch of money with, wanting to sell corn with cheese on it in Miami, and a bunch of Cubans losing their fucking minds because they couldn't stand to see one guy's picture on the wall. If we're dumbing it down to that level, now, the question becomes, if we're to the extent we can shake our heads and we can get upset about it.
I'm not upset.
And we're all upset. We're all upset. Let's not pretend. We are all upset that this regime has succeeded in its propaganda efforts to the point that Fidel and Castro, more than half a century later,
Fidel is Castro.
I'm sorry, Fidel and Che Guevara are on these walls or on this wallpaper more than half a century later. We're all upset about it. We're not going to pretend not to be upset. It's upsetting to everybody. But the question is...
Not everybody, obviously. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put it on the wall. There's plenty of people that don't understand.
All of us who are connected to that history are upset about it. Everybody in everyone in this room is upset about it.
Have a restaurant for communists. Communists have a right to have their own restaurant.
Of course they do.
But
the question is not about. But this conversation is not about people's rights. We all agree that nobody should be forcing them to shut down the restaurant. The question is, are we better off with? Are we better? Let's suppose that these two things are equally possible, right? Mm-hmm. Is this movement for freedom in Cuba better off with either some secondhand store or another sexy fish or whatever the fuck it is,
sexy fish,
opening in place of Café Habana? Or are we better off with Café Habana in a future where Café Habana is an ally to Cuban freedom?
I don't see how that's going to change anything.
You don't see how Café... Then, but if that's not going to change anything, then what difference does it make if they're an opponent to Cuban freedom?
I viscerally disagree because, like, here's the thing: is that we deal with an entire country that has no idea what our people have dealt with, right? So these people, what's their name?
I only remember Sean Meenan, who's one of the partners. So I don't want to make it all, but he's the one.
So all those partners, right?
He's the one. And for context, he's the one who's like the biggest name because he was an early investor in Etsy.
Good for him.
So a guy who's made a lot of money on capitalism is going to support a restaurant that's basically an homage to socialism.
It goes back to the sensationalism of what we deal with, right? Like you have people like Jay-Z that are walking through Havana wearing Che shirts. It's sensationalized. You know why? Because middle America doesn't understand what we have dealt with and the story that we have. So if we have a chance, this is the only way this shit's going to happen, right? Because the other way, the last 60 years, hasn't fucking worked.
Sure.
It hasn't fucking worked, right? So if we want to like barrel down and beat all the fucking pans down that we want, walking down the fucking street for 3 days, right? Because we're still fighting the same fucking fight. The protests have stopped. We're still fighting the same fucking fight. If we can't do it this way, right, which is actually getting in at the ground level of things that don't understand why this is wrong, then we're never going to succeed. And like, listen, these guys, I would tell them to their face, you guys are fucking morons, right? Like you guys are a bunch of fucking idiots because you didn't do your homework, right?
That's my point. They didn't do their homework. They didn't research what they're doing.
But that's also not what you're saying, right? Like you didn't do your fucking homework, right? But at the same time, like let's change it. Let's change it. And the only people that are going to change it are the people in this city. And as soon as we stop giving a fuck about our day-to-day, like our day-to-day, right? Because like all we give a fuck about, and this is like the American hamster wheel, is about our day-to-day, and we care about like bigger things, we're going to continue living the life that people want us to live. And we've been doing the same thing for 60 years. We've been beating down pots and pans. We've been angry about a bunch of shit. But if we don't get down to the ground level so people can understand why we're pissed the fuck off.
And this restaurant is going to change that?
Yeah, it's part of it. That's why this restaurant that's above us right now, it's part of that change. It's part of that change. We are part of that change. You're part of that change. Nick's part of that change. Danny's part of that change. We're all part of that change. And the only reason we're part of that change is by saying it.
And
by
it
doing
it takes more than that. So I'm just going to step in here because I've been listening to both of you. So first off, I agree with you. They needed to have done their research. And if they did their research, and this is the concept that they came up with, they've obviously been operating in other cities for a while. So this isn't like fresh and they didn't know, and they immediately changed the description on their Google page and on their other pages as soon as it started hitting the interwebs. They were like, oh, let's remove this history of them talking in Mexico, and that's how we came up with the concept. They immediately changed it, so they knew something was up. I think that there's a free market at work here, and I think that we should allow the free market to work. And I think the free market says that, you know what, you open up a restaurant, and if it's a good quality restaurant and people come to it, you're going to be successful. And if it's not, you're going to fail. And I think they deserve to have that experience. And you open up a restaurant that is in favor of communism in Miami, chances are it's going to fail.
I don't agree.
Hopefully so.
I don't agree.
And so on. You like, okay, well then it's going to survive.
Salt Bae is still fucking open. Salt Bae is here. Like that guy fed fucking mass murder, right? Like, am
Yeah,
I
he
wrong
fed- he
here?
fed Maduro.
But Maduro's still in power in Venezuela, and he's not being removed. Listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that the problem with Salt Bay is he doesn't lead with it, and most people aren't aware. I was aware that he had fed Maduro or
But
Chavez
there
or
were
whatever.
protests for days outside of that restaurant, and it was all over the news. It was more all over the news than this is.
And the suits still go.
Yeah,
And they're still gonna
And
go.
the
Cubans still go.
And
Cubans
I
who
mean,
had this in their
there's
social
Cuban
media feeds
suits
still
too.
go.
Like you could say suits. Suits are all kinds of
Yeah,
cultures and people and all kinds of things. They still fucking go, right? That's what I'm saying. If you can get in at the ground level is where what makes a difference, right? They're trying to come into our city, right? And they obviously got a TikToker called him out. Good for him. I don't know
Great
who this
for
guy.
him.
I don't know who this guy is, but good for him.
I had a brief exchange with him earlier today.
Yeah, good for him. Just
Yeah.
tell him. Good.
Yeah.
For him.
I was a little critical of his TikToking.
Were you
Shocker!
really?
You were critical of a TikToker.
I
I'm
was,
shocked.
Yeah, I wouldn't co-sign 100% of what he said.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, he still called somebody out, and the thing was wrong. And I think that, like, at the
He
end,
did a better job than the Herald did.
okay. And apparently, from what you think, the New York Times did.
Yeah, it goes TikToker, New York Times, Herald.
Okay. All right. So,
We've got our order.
I mean, we have a responsibility to change narrative. We do. I think at this point we've tried a good amount of things, and not a lot of things have actually worked. So the only thing that we could do is continue to honor our culture, and then also try to change the narrative for the rest of the country. Because the rest of the country has no fucking clue about who we are and what we've done and what we've been through and what our grandparents went through and what our parents went through.
Forget about
and
all of
this.
the things that we've gone through, the things that people in Cuba are going through right now. And that's the problem that I have. Because here's the thing. I spend my every waking moment that I'm not being a mom or running for office trying to get medicine into Cuba. So far, I've sent over 900 pounds of medicine, especially antibiotics, which people are legitimately dying from COVID because they can't get access to the most basic of needs. There's no Tylenol in Cuba. There's no saline solution. If you go to a hospital in Cuba, they don't even have to give you an IV. Okay, you need your blood drawn in Cuba, you better bring your own needle because they don't even have this. I have been sending shit tons of medicine to Cuba on my own damn dime. I've raised some and I've sent a whole lot of medicine to Cuba. So yes, this is all fine and dandy, but none of this is going to change what's going on in Cuba. And people need to know what's happening right now.
And how
people
how,
need to
and,
know
and,
this.
and I think my question is, how do you want that? How do you want that to change? Right?
I
'Cause
want it to
we can-
change by us doing more for Cuba right now. Forget about our
100%.
history. My family too, your family, everybody's family here.
100%. But the
Let's
only way to
do
continue
more.
to change that dialogue is so the rest of the country understands that. So
Right.
by changing somebody that I don't know who the fuck these people are, right? I do
Like-
in some ways, but
Look at Michael Moore's documentary. This is what everybody brings up to me when I'm like, I'm sending medicine to Cuba. They're like, but why? Have you not seen Cuba's healthcare? And it's free and it's amazing. Look, Michael Moore went
No,
to
of
2
course.
hospitals. The one that Fidel would go to and the one that the military goes to. He went to 2 hospitals in Havana, the 2 only hospitals that actually have things. And so now the entire narrative of this country is Cuba's wonderful. They have free education and free healthcare. And so by allowing this to come into our own city and us not going like, you know what? No, fuck this shit. We're not going to have this, we're going to have this conversation and
But
we're
we
gonna
don't we
change
don't live in a
it.
society that people want to have a fucking conversation.
Right. So they should hear that there's like an outrage over it.
You need to lay them up a softball, right? And that's the reality of it. You need to lay them up a softball. And some dumb fucking coffee shop that's going to open in fucking Brickell that has created an outrage, I can guarantee you it's going to open and it's going to stay open. It's going to open, it's going to stay open. Because the amount of transient culture that there is in that part of the city will not give
Then
3
they'll
fucks
stay.
if it's open.
No, forget not giving 3 fucks. They won't be aware of this.
and that's correct. You know why? Because there will be 3 days of protest, and then they'll go away because people need to go the fuck to work so they can survive.
Yeah.
That's the reality of life. So if we
And
can
hopefully
get it,
somebody saw that TikTok and was like, isn't that restaurant on that TikTok?
But here's the question for
and then instead they go to Starbucks, and is that better?
And I understand the issue of
I did buy us a Starbucks, so I don't know. I hope it is better.
It's not better though.
No.
Why not? It's a capitalist company. I hope. I
mean,
haven't heard anything else about
understand the underlying effects of coffee worldwide, and tell me if Starbucks is
it.
better.
Oh, I don't know.
I know, and that's what I mean.
Yeah, but
That's
if
what
we
I mean.
go
So it's not.
We all
it's-
have iPhones here. Do we understand that, like, the people that have to mine the minerals for these iPhones? Do we understand that they come from China? And
But
like
it's
we
the
have
easy-
the Olympics right now in China, where they legitimately have like concentration camps. And the worst part is they're like, "Hey, you from a concentration camp, come light the torch." I mean, come on. We have selective outrage, right? We're like pissed over one thing, but not another.
There's only so much
selective
bandwidth.
outrage.
There's only
we can
so much
spend
bandwidth
all
a
day
person
just
has.
but this is an issue that is near and dear to our heart. In Miami, the vast majority of us are Cuban. So it's almost like a slap in our face. It's like, you know what? I'm going to go into the middle of the Cuban diaspora and be like, bah, Che Guevara and Fidel Castro. It's kind of like, you had Honolulu, you had LA, you had New York. You really have to come here too?
But is that really what you... But honestly, do you think that, just to keep saying his name, because that's the one name I can remember, but he's not the only partner, do you really think that Sean Meenan, that his plan was to show up in Miami and slap all these Cuban Americans? Or do you think that he showed up here ignorant of the
he's definitely
implications?
not that smart.
If he's ignorant like that, I mean, come on. I've started a few businesses. You don't just like show up one day and know nothing and decide I'm just gonna.
A lot of
Oh,
people.
you're out of your mind.
A lot of people do.
You're out of your
A lot
mind
of
if you think
people
that
do.
people right now in the climate that we're living in, right? Because this is now my world, right? The amount of people that want to come here and the amount of developers and landlords that are like, oh, New York, LA, whatever. Oh, that sounds so nice. How many fucking locations has Major Food Group opened up in the last like fucking year? And they will continue to do that because they're a New York brand. It doesn't matter what they stand for. It's what's behind them. Right? And the amount of people that are going to come here and that continue to move here from other places that now see it as a relatable concept.
And not only
Forget
that,
about all the other
failed
shit.
as like a community that is suffering for 63 years under this brutal dictatorship. I mean, talk about it. Like, we were just talking about the N-word, right? And how this is, people are so like, you can't even reference the N-word.
Of course.
And yet, I say that Cuba is an island where everybody on it, 11 million people are slaves, and it's like, don't you dare say that.
No,
don't you dare say that.
but
We
Martha,
have failed as a
issue-
community
but the
to
issue-
really express these issues that are near and dear. Nobody in Cuba has freedom. Not as Cuba's an island. It's water all around it.
We're missing
There's fish
the
in the
boat.
water, and nobody can go outside
To not
and
say a
fish.
pun.
People are dying in Cuba of hunger and
Of course.
surrounded by food. And we don't like. It's just insane that
Of
we're
course, but
having this.
the question becomes at what point. So to go back to what you were saying about I just want to stick with Sean Meenan because I don't want to drag because I don't want to.
man, this
Why
guy,
don't you
Sean
mention
Meenan,
his name? The
Sean
guy
Meenan
is
and
like-
Well, no,
company.
because I don't want to drag
company.
Mario Carbone now into this Cuba
No, I
controversy.
mean Mario has nothing to do with this.
Mario has
He
nothing to
just-
do with this.
He's a businessman.
But to your
I'll
point,
give
right?
him
Like
that.
you have all of these people who are coming into Miami because they see an open state and an open county and an open city, and they see opportunity for business. All of these brands that are coming in from New York and from Texas and from LA, wherever the fuck it is that they're coming from, their consulting agencies, their marketing agencies, their PR agencies are all coming from the same world. This is a cacophony of noise that is completely disconnected from what in the end, because we are talking about us living in this little tiny bubble of Cuban Americanness, has no connection, has no sense of even the tone deaf, albeit they wouldn't know the tone if you played it into their ear through a vuvuzela.
So what a great opportunity for Cuban American businesses to reach out to these companies and be like,
Exactly.
you need to know that
Right.
when you come to Miami,
Correct.
there's a little bit of this. I
Correct.
wouldn't
And
go
but-
into
okay.
a Jewish neighborhood again
Exactly.
and set up a
But Martha, you're
Hail Hitler.
you're making my point for me.
Yeah.
Because the reaching out is reaching out. Reaching out is not slapping you down. Now, if I come out and I say
Latinx. I mean, there's a lot of tone deafness going on in
That's
this
fine.
world, and
But if I come out and I say, listen, you need to know this. The implication when I say you need to know this is, and I'm going to give you a beat to decide what you do now that you do know it.
and now
But
they
if-
know it, and I
Okay.
hope that they take down
and
that
at that
media.
point, if you fail,
yes.
then you fail.
But
At that
that is-
point, you are a scumbag.
we have alerted them.
But that is my criticism. No, but you don't alert people. You don't alert people by jumping down their throats. You alert people by opening that dialogue that a moment ago we were mocking. The dialogue has to happen. If you're doing something wrong and I come around and I say, fuck you, don't open your restaurant, you're a communist, I know everything about you and everything about where you come from, I have not alerted you, I have shut you down. Those are two different things. And I am not interested. No, but that's no, they're not shut down. But that's what. But that's what. But that is what. But that is what meant. No, I don't think people will succeed.
I think we're speaking out of both sides of our mouth.
No, we're not. No, we're not. I don't think people will succeed, but I do think that is what people are attempting to do. I think the people who are attempting to do that will fail, and the great shame of it is that all of these people who are so motivated, and to their credit, they are motivated to do something for Cuba, are putting their efforts into a thing where it will end up being for naught. Because instead of putting their effort into co-opting this restaurant and making it a part of their cause, they are going and they are fighting a windmill. Because there is no shutting this down. Because even if you manage to shut down this restaurant, what are they going to do? They're going to open one in Broward. They're going to open one in Georgia. They're going to open one in Texas. I would rather see this be the place where the ripple originates. That the one in Honolulu has a picture of Bisset on its wall rather than a picture of Che Guevara on its wall. That's what I want to see. But if our first move is to troll them to the point that they shut down their comment section, you know what's not going to happen? Any of that.
But we can't control that. I didn't comment on their thing. Did you?
No, I didn't. But but you know what we can do? What we can do is we can go on a podcast and we can say something other than your business needs to be shut down.
I mean, I also feel like there's a lot of people that say a lot of things, right? Like we want your business to shut down and blah blah whatever. And by the comment section of anything in the world is ran by a bunch of people that sit behind a keyboard that don't actually make things happen.
Right.
And I think that there's a large reality to that.
Keyboard warriors, sure. And
you see it all through the social media things and all the things that happen every single day. And they'll be up in arms, right? And the truth is, like, there'll be protests for like a day or two, and then they're gonna go, and then they're gonna go away.
The July 11th shit has died.
That's why.
If that died, this will die.
That's why I'm saying, listen, Sean, is his name Sean?
Yeah, Sean Meenan.
Sean and company. You want to come on this podcast? You either want to be educated or
Cindy Crawford, a partner, is also welcome on this podcast.
Cindy Crawford is a partner?
Yeah. And her husband, whose name I forget.
Randy Gerber.
Yeah, they're both partners. Or they at least own a franchise if they're not partners.
So, if you want to come on the podcast and you want to either be educated or you want to tell us your point, I'm open to both. Right, because I'd love to hear your point.
And listen, I'm open to having the conversation and telling them after, like, go fuck yourself.
And absolutely, because I do this every single fucking day, right? But that's also the art of conversation, right? Which is dead, because we can. Nick and I love Nick dearly. We disagree.
Oh, that's the cutest thing that's been said on this podcast.
Has it?
Oh, man,
is it? So good. I don't think so. I doubt that, but. We disagree and we agree to disagree, and that's okay, and that's fine, because Nick is who Nick is and I am who I am, and that's totally fine. Now, like, obviously what these people are talking about is a visceral disagreement to me, but if we want to have the opportunity to change someone's outlook on something, we have to be willing to have a conversation and not just be sitting there with pots and pans, which we've been sitting with for a long fucking time, and it hasn't fucking worked.
Right. And I'm not about that either.
So what is the next step? We want to say that they're going to close. They're just going to close. And they're going to go somewhere fucking else, because they're already somewhere else doing what they're doing. So, I'm the first person to tell people to go fuck themselves. I am. That's absolutely accurate. I don't care. If you don't like me, that's totally fucking fine. But I'm willing to sit down and have a conversation to disagree, or maybe to find a common ground.
Sure, and I agree with that. I agree we should have this conversation. However, at this point, they've been notified. Now they have a choice to make.
Through what, though? Notified through like a bunch of
trollery?
Throwing cheese up against the wall and watching it slide down.
So if you all of a sudden saw a whole bunch of comments of reviews of your restaurant, and you saw a whole bunch of people saying this is a communist, you wouldn't be like, let me take a look at what they're complaining about.
And I'm sure, but they have, right? Because they changed their whole like dialogue on their website and the thing.
And I hope that they take down the portrait of Che and Fidel, and they take down the Biggie thing on the side of the building.
Oh yeah, what was it? Papa.
Comrade Biggie or something,
Yeah.
Comandante Biggie.
or something like that. You know, which I find
But that's
disrespectful as heck.
But that's sensationalizing. What is it like? Pop culture.
Let the man rest in peace.
Pop
please. I don't think
culture,
he wanted
right?
to be
It's
comandante
just-
anything.
I mean, it's just, again, it's like what kids that don't understand what that really means, like, oh, well, there's Biggie. They don't see the other part. We see the other part. And that's why if we have an impact to take down a mural of someone that I love and someone that I both hate at the same time, then I'm all about that. I'm all about that. Let's take that fucking thing down because I love that person, because I love his music, and I hate that person because I hate what the other word means, right?
They can paint over that comandante part and just leave the Biggie. That would have been.
And I'm sure,
swell.
but we're not going to get there by just like berating with 10 million comments of a bunch of fucking people that just
But
sit
I'm not
behind
in
their
favor
keyboard.
of this. I'm just
and
saying
I know, and
that we
I'm
need to have this conversation, but we also, as a community that has been severely affected by this, because I'm sure that I'm not the only one that put my grandparents in a grave when both of them were like, I'm just going to go back home soon.
Right.
You know, and I had to live through, my grandfather's been dead now for almost 20 years. And it's like, this shit is painful. I'm sorry. All he wanted in life was to go home, and he never had that opportunity. And it's been 63 years, and it's like, okay, I get it. We've really sucked at our messaging. We've really failed this endeavor, right? We have. People in America don't understand. One movie by Michael Moore has done more to spread Cuban propaganda than 63 years of what's really been happening. And I think that's the conversation we should be having, which is, why is this thing so attractive? And you know what? It's a bigger problem. It's everything that's going on around us. It's COVID related. It's Canada related. It's what's happening in Australia. People don't understand. I grew up in Venezuela. I saw communism starting with my own two eyes. I saw my dad telling everybody he could, I've seen this before. It's going to happen here. And every single Venezuelan my father told, it was like, ay, Cubano, you have no idea what you're talking about. Look at our vast wealth. We are so rich. We have so much oil. We have so much of everything. Nothing is going to happen. 20 years later, it took Venezuela less time than it took Cuba to get to the position they're in. So you know what? We have to take our responsibility. We have failed. We, the people who have lived this life, have failed to communicate to other people. This is the reality. This is the reality. You give these people in power this power over you, and this is what's going to happen. You're going to be miserable. Why are you going to be miserable? Because you're going to have nothing, and you're definitely not going to like it, which is that whatever thing that is going around about how the world is going to be different and we're all going to just enjoy it. No, you're not going to enjoy it because you're not going to have anything, and you're going to have no say in it. So we've failed, and that's where my anger comes from. How do we change this? We have these conversations, but also we don't just let them open up without telling them, hey guys, guess what? I think you're failing miserably. I think that if you have a wall, a mural with Fidel and Che on it, then let's put the reality. Let's have it filled with blood. Let's put, you know what? Why don't you depict people being shot on that wall? Why don't you depict how much Che used to write home to his father? It's in his books. How much he enjoyed killing people that he thought was beneath him. Who were beneath him? People of color, gay people, people that didn't think like he did. Is this who you want to have on your wall? Have at it. You want to eat next to some murderers on a wall? Have the fuck at it. But at least know what you're putting up there.
The question is, do those people actually know that that's what they're emulating?
And that's what I'm saying.
But that's
we
why.
aren't
But
doing
that's why
it.
the conversation needs to happen.
Right.
Sure, and I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying we need to do a better job at marketing. We're not.
In other words, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what Mike is driving at is that yes, everybody in this room agrees. We would rather that the person on the other end of this understand that thing that they clearly don't understand. The question is, are they more likely to understand it if you come to them, if they perceive you as coming to them in good faith, from a sort of like a familial, helpful, welcoming posture, right? Or are you more likely to find success if you come to them aggressively and if you come to them assuming bad intentions?
I think it's very difficult for this community
to
take it on the chin and be like, hey, guys.
But that's not the question. Because I'm not asking what is the easy thing to do. The correct thing is almost always the hard thing. So that's not the question.
And I
the,
think
the
that
question
the
is,
Bitcoin conference itself proves that we are there. I had a conversation with them saying, hey guys, you're bringing this person. I gave them all the reasons, and we still haven't heard back from them. Hopefully they take it and they decide, hey, this is a bad idea. We're not going to invite them. Chances are, if they've sat on it for 2 weeks, my hope is very diminished. So I can tell you, at least from that experience, I did exactly that. I came to them and I said, hey guys, this is the problem.
So I'll tell you from another experience.
This is what's going to happen. Unlike this restaurant, Bitcoin conference only lasts 3 days, and we definitely have the stamina to spend a weekend.
I'll tell you from another.
Taking care of this at the Bitcoin conference on Miami Beach.
I'll tell you from another experience, because I think that, you know, for every story one way, there may very well be a story another way, and ultimately, I mean, these are strategies that have been proven to work, right? I mean, if we're looking at what peaceful movements to bring down dictators look like, they always look, and I mean 100% of the time, they always look like co-opting these pillars of support. They never look like internet trollery. 0% of the time does that bring down dictatorships.
Yeah.
Never.
No matter what we do, we're not going to bring down the dictatorship with this restaurant.
That's not what I said. That's a straw man argument.
I'm not sorry. I'm just
no.
saying
What
that
I'm
nothing
saying
that
is
happens with this restaurant is going to
not even contribute.
I mean,
so here's the question: is I'm not talking about taking the restaurant away from Sean Meenan. I don't care about Sean Meenan.
Right.
I'm talking about taking that restaurant away from Fidel Castro, who I know is dead, and Raul Castro, and
they're not
Díaz
affected
Canel.
by it either.
They are affected by it, and here's why they're affected by it. They are affected by it because that restaurant is one of a myriad of cultural institutions that serve to reinforce and amplify and propagate communist propaganda in communities like Brooklyn, in communities like Honolulu, in places like Brickell, where Brickell is not voting overwhelmingly with Cuba in mind, and certainly not with sympathy for the Cuban American community in mind. That is a pillar of support for the Cuban government, and there is a reason why the Cuban government has been so fixed. There's a reason why Fidel Castro was in Harlem. There's a reason why he met with Malcolm X. It wasn't because he was particularly interested in the Nation of Islam. It's not because he was particularly interested in the American Civil Rights Movement. It's because he understood that the United States, that leftism in the United States, that liberalism in the United States, that progressivism in the United States was a pillar of support for the communist revolution in Cuba. That restaurant is a direct extension. You don't have to put too many curves or pivots in that line to draw a line between Fidel Castro in Harlem and Café Habana. So the question is not, do you take Café Habana away from Brickell and away from Sean Meenan? The question is, do you take Café Habana and flip it? Now,
that's assuming you can.
That's assuming you can.
I mean, we're not assuming.
It's not assuming.
We're willing to have the conversation to try to flip it.
I'm not assuming. It's that I want to give myself a shot. And I know from every interaction that I've ever had that every single because I went through my angry libertarian phase. I went through my everybody's an idiot phase. I went through my...
You're done with that phase?
I'm done with that phase.
I don't believe that, but go on. Okay.
I went through my everybody's stupid phase. I went through my wagging my finger up. When I was at the University of Missouri, I had, for a period of about 6 months, I had a stack of printed copies of a letter that I would hand out to anybody that had a Che Guevara shirt on. And it did nothing. And I had a lot of exchanges based on this letter. And it did nothing because it was an angry letter that looked a lot like the things that these people are blocking from their comment sections. Now, years later, I am in a meeting with Juanes about the concert he's going to do in Havana. And he had been ready to do the same concert that we've all seen a million times from all of these bands. And because we came to him with a certain posture, and the history of that concert is a whole other story, but it's not a Juanes issue in my mind. We ended up taking him from, I want to do this concert because there's an issue with the U.S. government aggressing the Cubans, to, I will do this concert calling for freedom in Cuba. I'm going to invite Los Aldeanos to play. I'm going to invite Willie Chirino to play. And if the Cubans arrest anybody for trying to go to the concert, try to control the cameras, or try to control the set list, I will cancel the show. We didn't get there by berating him. We didn't get there by shouting him down. We didn't do any of that. When I was at the University of Missouri, I also managed to flip a number of institutions at that university from we are, sympathetic to all of these Cuban Revolution mierdas to we're going to participate in fundraisers to buy diapers and aspirin and shit for La Dama de Blanco. And I didn't get there by showing up at the Black Student Union and wagging my finger at them or yelling at them. So there's no reason, and in the same way, again, and I go back because this isn't just a Cuban issue, this is a human issue. They did not bring down Milosevic and co-opt his police forces by telling them, you're all assholes, go fuck yourselves. I'm going to beat you up in the streets if I find you. No, they told them, you are victims, we are victims. I am sorry that you've been hoodwinked by this tyrant. This is the truth. What do you do with it now? There's a place for you in this society. And that's how you bring down Milosevic. This is not a fantasy of mine. This played out in Serbia, it played out in Georgia, it played out in Turkey, it played out in the Czech Republic over and over and over again. Trollery never succeeds. And openness succeeds with a realism of, right, but giving people that opportunity and telling them there is a place for you. There is a place for you tomorrow if you make the right choice today. But this that we did, and I say we very loosely because I don't like saying we in this collective, Cuban American community thing. I didn't do it, but to the extent that there is a we, this thing that we did of shut them down, shut them down, shut them down, the immediate message was, it doesn't matter what you do, there's no place for you here tomorrow. And that's immediately you shut down any possibility of having co-opted them. And I don't care about winning against Sean Meenan. I care about winning against Raul Castro. I care about winning against Díaz-Canel.
You automatically you shut down the opportunity for change.
Right. Give them a day, give them a month, give them a week, whatever it is, but give them an opening.
The thing is if you don't have this conversation, they're going to open. They're going to stay open. I just know.
The window closes, much like with the batch cocktails.
Yeah, it does.
The window closes.
I think,
and then there's just elote with a Cuban flag on it and
guacamole next to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the moral of the story is I'd like to have a conversation with these people. And I think that if there's anyone, there's probably people more qualified than both. Well, definitely me. Maybe not Nick.
I'm very qualified.
Yeah, maybe not Nick.
No.
So
can I? And I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just want to say because I don't want to. I've said some things on the interwebs that
have you?
Yeah, that it's possible. It's possible he's seen, and I don't want to be seen as like pussyfooting around the issue. I really do believe, and I don't know him very well, but I do believe that Carlos Frias missed an opportunity here. I think that, and let me make it very clear, I'm not speaking for Michael Beltran of.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I'm speaking for myself, 100% for myself, and I like Carlos Frias a lot. I have not had a conversation with him. I would really like to, about what his thinking was in publishing the story about this as he did. I don't know if you know the Herald piece. The only Herald piece you've read about this whole thing was...
I don't remember the angle of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically a summary of the things that happened on social media. And I think that the fact that it sort of goes to, Carlos Frias is a Cuban-American person from Miami. He's the food editor at the Herald. Before that, he was a sports journalist at the Palm Beach Post. He wrote a book called Take Me With You that I haven't read, but that is based on an essay series he wrote for the Palm Beach Post about his first trips to Cuba that I remember reading in college. And I was like, I think I was in a math class, like in an auditorium classroom, and I was weeping reading this. It was one of the most powerful things I'd ever read about anything Cuba related, and especially from that, born in the U.S. Perspective. And then when it came to this story, which, maybe in the grand scheme of things is kind of a small thing, but I think it was a missed opportunity for a Miami Cuban American in the position of the food editor at the Miami Herald to treat this subject, which of course is food related, in a way that the fact that article didn't add any new information. Like the New York Times piece that maybe you saw I posted on Instagram I don't know, whatever. The New York Times wrote, like, they published a thing that was like just like a few inches of text. And it quotes somebody from the whatever Institute of Cuban American Studies, no sé qué, at FIU, and it quotes some random dude who's like a total comunitoide stooge from here in Miami, who's Cuban American, who apparently lived in Argentina for a while, and it quotes that TikToker. But that New York Times piece at least went out of its way to quote some people and to add information that you wouldn't have gotten if you were just following it on Instagram.
Yeah, that muerto that was on Facebook, right?
That muerto.
Muertísimo.
And but you know what? But the New York Times person, I have a lot of beefs with the way they covered it, but they did it in a way that added some new things that I had not seen before. Okay,
You could find it on Nicholas
Nicolas
Jiménez.
A.
Nicholas A. Jiménez. His story right now. We'll keep it live. We'll keep it live. We'll do it live. We're actually gonna put in a little box in the bottom. So when this is published, you can go and you can reference it. He's got lots of things to say about that New York Times article.
Yeah.
And you could see it there.
So my point is that I don't want to be seen as pussyfooting around this. I think Carlos Frias is a lovely human being. I really wish, to the extent that it's appropriate to be, I want to be constructive about it. And I hope that in the future, when we have these kinds of controversies, that people who are in that kind of a position to add something new, take it to add something new, because it was a middle school book report level summary of what happened on social media. No, this guy Instagrammed this guy tweeted this. 3 years ago, we wrote about this protest that happened at Salt Bay's restaurant. Like, there is nothing new in that article, and I'm saying this because Carlos Frias is a brilliant storyteller and he is capable. I really, when I saw that he had done something with this, I thought, thank God. And then I opened it and I thought, they could have had an intern do this. There was no reason for Carlos Frias to touch that thing. And I wonder whether he understands what he's capable of, because he really is. I want him to do so much for this thing, and I think he's in such a unique position to have so much of an impact as the food editor at the Herald, who's so aware and so sensitive to all of these Cuban things. I
just want you to know.
Yeah,
this is like episode 5
we're
on.
So anyway, that's the end of my Carlos Frias rant. But
well, I mean, I like Carlos a lot.
I like him too.
I didn't read the piece that you're talking about, so
I didn't read it with the detail you did.
No, I didn't read it at all.
There wasn't much to it.
Yeah, I mean, I know the subject that we're talking about, and
that was the lightning round.
Well, that was the
that was the addendum, the extra minisode.
That was the minisode.
Yeah,
and I think that this is an opportunity for Café Habana.
Yeah,
if you got something to say, this is a good place to say it.
Yeah, there's camarón enchilada empanadas over here.
Well, I mean, if $50 a month.
That's right. I'll send you guys coffee.
Gets you coffee and an empanada now.
I mean, that's so worth it.
Yeah, I mean, $50 a month. I mean, I'll take your $50 a month with no pictures of Che involved.
Very good. Are we done here?
I think we're good.
Right.
No lightning rounds for this.
No. Thanks again, Martha.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.